Sir, um, Senator Robert Martwick comes in, we'll turn it over to him. But if not, we I'll turn it over to Troy Swanson, our legislative chair, and he'll give a brief presentation about our bill and where we're at right now. And then we'll open it up for folks. So let me just say thank you very much and good evening and welcome. We're really happy that you've joined us for this policy briefing of our elected board of trustees for the city colleges of Chicago, SB 1693. The purpose of this meeting is to give a status report of where our bill is and to get feedback from you all as elected officials, as well as our labor and community partners in this campaign. I'll very soon turn it over to Rob Martwick, and he has just joined us, which is great. And also our legislative chair, Troy Swanson, to give more in-depth analysis. But I think it might be helpful to give a personal anecdote from my point of view of why the members of our union, Local 1600, feel this is important and why this has been part of our legislative agenda for many years. To put it very frankly, we simply want what all of the other community college districts have in Illinois, a board of trustees who are elected by the people, and those people who pay taxes to those districts in order to run these colleges. And so in some ways you could say it goes back to 1776, where we want representation if there's going to be taxation. We could point to abuses of past administrations like reinvention, led by then Mayor Rahm Emanuel, who decided to close good programs in all of the city colleges and give each city college a designated specialty, which essentially made it impossible for our students to take the courses that they needed at the city college in their area, in their neighborhood. But really, what we're asking for is extremely simple. We want democracy and accountability. We're asking for something which the vast majority of Chicagoans have wanted for many years. There's been referendum about elected boards, both CPS and city colleges. And obviously, we've gone through a round of elected board elections for CPS. So we are asking for something that everybody understands and wants. And to be honest, we don't understand why it should be this difficult to achieve something that most everyone agrees is good and necessary. And it was basically that sort of line of thought that made me, at that time, I was legislative chair of Local 1600 in 2015, reach out to at that time, Representative Robert Martwick, who had just introduced legislation for a CPS board. And when I saw that, I essentially just called him up and said, hey, we need an elected board too. And his response was, yes, let's do it. And since then, he's been a tireless warrior for this legislation. And with that, I'll turn it over to Senator Martwick to say some comments about the legislation and why it's important to him. Go ahead, Rob.
Thanks, Tony, and thanks for having me join you. Appreciate the history and the background. I think you summed it up well. In 2012, when I ran for office, I ran on a platform of bringing about an elected school board to the Chicago Public Schools. And as said, even prior to running, I'd had a long relationship with the Cook County College Teachers Union. And Tony reached out to me and said, we need this too. And in some ways, so much attention has been put on CPS and the board that's been created there. But in some ways, as Tony mentioned, it was almost even equally as, if not more important in this instance. Every other school, community college in the state has this. This is the only community college system that doesn't have it. And it allowed for dramatic changes on the whims and fancies of one elected executive. And that shouldn't be how we address higher education policy in a city like ours. If we wish to continue to be a world-class city, we have work to do. And one of those is making sure that we continue to have a cohesive education policy that should not be dictated to us. One of the things that Tony said to me that really struck me was that, you know, K through 12 education is almost by its definition, by its structure, it's more authoritarian, right? I mean, there have to be rules and regulations, and but higher education has traditionally been very collaborative.
Are trying to.
Sorry, it's collaborative with hello, Marcus. Has been more collaborative with education and educators and administrators, faculty and administration working together to create a more cohesive vision. And that really lacked. And because of that, pretty dramatic changes were made that really affected the ability of who community colleges were designed to serve, that really in many ways created significant barriers to them getting the services that they need, and that we as government, the big government, are supposed to provide for them. And so, but the problem, of course, is that, there's only so much bandwidth. And I tried to move these simultaneously, but the CPS board was the one that got the most attention and got the opportunity to move. And the idea was always that, okay, we'll get the first one across the finish line, and then we will use the tailwinds to bring this one across with it. And so, that's where we've been. This bill has passed the House of Representatives in the past. And so it has been in prior General Assemblies. It's been debated. It has been voted on. There has been widespread support. Currently in the Senate, we have 40 or 41 co-sponsors. Either way, super majority, veto-proof majority. So there is strong support for it. And what I will tell you, as the person who worked the roll call, when I bring this up to my colleagues in the Senate, it doesn't take a lot of contemplation before they signed on. That's the kind of thing where you just say, "Hey, I'm running the bill for the elected board for the Chicago City Colleges," and it's the reaction is always like, "Oh yeah, I'm for that. Put me on." Put me on. So the support is strong, and it is not something where people are like, "Well, I'm not sure how I feel about it." It's there. So we have the support of the Senate. And again, I don't profess to know the details of everything that's going on in my former chamber in the House, but I believe, given the strength of the support in the Senate, that it would receive similar support in the House. But we need to push right now. There is always a hesitancy, and of course, what's complicated matters is everything going on in the federal government is giving everyone pause, and so people are sort of afraid to take a step. But again, I think that this would be a very different situation than CPS. And again, I apologize, Tony, for being on a few minutes late, so I don't know how much you've covered. I don't want to double over anything, but I think that this would be much easier to effectuate, much easier to administrate. We don't have the complicated entangled finances like we do with CPS, where we've got our work cut out for us in the General Assembly, and how we disentangle those finances between the Chicago Public Schools and the City of Chicago. I don't believe there's much of that. We don't have those same pension issues that we have to figure out in this. So this is something that, for sake of understanding, since the bill was filed, this is 10 years. It's been a decade that this bill has been waiting for its opportunity to be heard. When you've got a bill that's been waiting for a decade, there is no major opposition, and you've got super majorities in a chamber, it's time for that bill to get a hearing and make its way to the finish line. And So, I am pushing for that. And of course, any advocacy that can be done or joined by people who are here, I would certainly appreciate it. And of course, from my experience with this and, the CPS, because this was always, it was part A and part B, right? So if you have any questions about how these two bills were related, continue to be related, or how we get this one across the finish line, I'm happy to answer any questions. And with that, I'll turn it back to Tony. And thank you everyone for joining and being a part of this.
Thanks, Senator Markwick. I'm going to turn it over to Troy. He's going to give a brief presentation about where, essentially what the bill says now, but also what are the possibilities for modification if necessary. So, Troy, take it away.
Yes, thanks, Tony, and thanks, Senator Martwick. Hello, everybody, and it's good to see so many representatives, senators, and alders who are here, and community members as we're trying to build support. It's probably good to even just note that the bill number right now is SB 1693. I don't know that we've actually said that, but lock that away in your head. 1693 is how we are identifying it this term in Springfield. And some of this I'll go through quickly because the senator and Tony hit a lot of these key points. But again, just to emphasize, electing community college trustees is not a new thing in Illinois. We have done this for most of our community colleges since 1967. There's only one place that we don't do this, and that's the city of Chicago. As Tony and Senator Martwick had hit, and I think the biggest challenge that we have is that when people elect the mayor, they don't think, oh, Truman College is such a great college, I'm going to vote for this mayor or retain this mayor, or Wright College is so great, or Olive Harvey is so great, so this is why we're going to vote for this mayor. And we often get forgotten by the mayor, and that hits that causes some of the issues that Tony mentioned, where there isn't trustees that are in the neighborhoods advocating for the needs of the community, who are directly responsible for the operations of the college, which is how it should be and how it is in the rest of the community colleges across Illinois. Just as a little perspective, and I think we lose track of this a little bit because, those of us in community colleges were a fairly new thing about 50 years ago. The Community College Act passed in Illinois in 1967, and it was a new cutting edge thing. And we've been so successful over those decades that we get taken for granted. But just as a reminder, the City Colleges of Chicago is the seventh largest community college district in the country. It's the equivalent in student size to the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign if it was as taken as one whole district with 60,000 students over a year. So that's a very sizable institution of higher education that has great impact across the region and across the city for sure. And it's obviously the largest community college district in Illinois. And so this is not something that is just sort of should be taking a back seat. We've waited to get through the CPS elections, as noted, and we feel like this district that plays such a prominent role in higher ed in Illinois deserves its time to move forward and have the same treatment as other districts. And this is the key thing that I really wanted to emphasize tonight, because I mean, quite frankly, talking to legislators in Springfield, I think there's quite a bit of PTSD left from the map making process with the CPS board. And I think there's a lot of, and perhaps rightly so, that when you say, oh, another elected board in the city of Chicago, there's senators and representatives that are sort of ducking under the tables, and I get it. But I think when we lay out some of these options, I think that some of these steps to move forward are actually make a lot of sense, and that the heavy lifting has already been done thanks to the work of in the process with the CPS elections this past year. So I'm just going to offer three options that could happen with the makeup of the board of trustees. First off, the current legislation has 20 seats, which mirrors the current CPS board, and that was done by design from the beginning. Both of these boards would be the same, but I don't think we're locked into that. And as we've gone through this last process, I think a lot of us think 20 trustees is actually maybe too many trustees for 7 colleges. I feel like, in my personal view, and I think from the union side, our view is that 10 trustees, which I want to talk a little bit more about, might be a better fit. But then one third possibility is we could do 7 trustees, which is similar to all the other community colleges in the state of Illinois. But just to hit this one with the 10 trustees, because I think that one makes a lot of sense. The map's are already in place, and we've already ran elections along these lines, that we could use the same 10 districts that we ran in the November election for the CPS board. This would make sense in terms of neighborhoods coming together. It would make sense politically, where you could have political organizations working together on the CPS board and the city college board, so that there would be some overlap there. There's some alignment along those lines, and it represents the community. And I think importantly, because this was the conversation before, is like what is the makeup of the board in terms of reflecting the diversity of Chicago. And those 10 districts had 3 majority African American districts, 3 majority Hispanic districts, 2 districts that were majority white, and 2 districts that had no racial majority. And I think those districts were a plurality white, but there's some numbers that kind of shift in there. But this would be districts that we've operated, districts that represent Chicago, that bring together neighborhoods, and that would make a board that's reflective of the city, but only 10 districts instead of 20 districts that feel fairly cumbersome, perhaps, for only 7 colleges. So this would make sense. We would say 10 districts plus 1 at-large chair would be 11-member board of trustees. And so to me, the work has been done, and this is something that we could pick up, move forward, and makes a lot of sense. But this is our challenge right now, is that, as Senator Martwick noted, we have 41 out of 59 senators. That's nearly 70% of the Senate as co-sponsors. But this bill is just sitting. This bill has not yet received a committee hearing, even a subject matter hearing. And that's, one of the things we're here to ask you for help is to reach out to the members of the Senate. And when you reach out, many of our senators are already on as co-sponsors, but don't just ask to be co-sponsors. Reach out and ask, why is this not moving forward? Can't we get this conversation going? Because I think when we go back and start talking about these districts, and if we could just have hearings to talk about these districts, I think this would make a lot of sense, and would put people at ease that we don't have to go through the same process we went through with the CPS bill. So that's the key issues that I wanted to hit. I'll stop sharing my screen, and I will say thank you to everybody, and I'll turn it back over to Tony.
Thanks, Troy. So, I mean, that in a nutshell is where we're at right now. And the rest of the time here is we would love to hear from anybody here, your reactions to where we're at, what we've done so far, and how we move forward. So I'll open it up, and if people want to use the raised hand function or put something in the chat,